Today we're diving into something pretty complex and fascinating. We're going to try to unpack how Elon Musk and AI are reshaping the U.S. government, the economy, and even the global landscape.
Sounds ambitious.
It is, but we like to get into the nitty-gritty here. So we'll uncover some surprising connections and hopefully help you understand not just what's happening, but why it matters to you.
Definitely. I think it's a really unique moment in history. We've got rapid technological change and some pretty bold political moves happening all at the same time.
Yeah, like everything's changing so fast. It can be kind of exhilarating, but also a little unsettling.
Totally. And one of the most striking examples of this is what I'm called the Doge revolution.
Yeah, Elon Musk's team and their plan to revamp the U.S. government.
Exactly. And it's already having a dramatic impact, especially in Washington, D.C. I mean, have you been following the fallout from the government layoffs?
It's hard to miss. It's all over the news.
Yeah, those mass layoffs Doge initiated, they've really sent shockwaves through the city, even affecting the housing market in a way I don't think anyone really predicted.
It's crazy, right? You see these graphs of plummeting home values, and it's a stark reminder that this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real people's lives being impacted.
Absolutely. We're talking about people who dedicated their entire careers to public service. And now they're facing so much uncertainty.
Not to mention all the businesses that rely on government contracts. They're feeling the ripple effects too.
For sure. And to think, it all happened so fast. I mean, Doge put together their official website and laid out these incredibly ambitious goals, cutting costs, slashing regulations, and shrinking the federal workforce. It was like, boom.
Classic Musk, right? He's all about disruption and moving at lightning speed.
And this is where things get really interesting, I think. They're using AI and all this data analysis to achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's what's got everyone talking. So how's it actually working?
Well, they're using these sophisticated algorithms to target what they consider redundant government positions. You know, they want to streamline the workforce, which is currently at something like 2.25 million employees.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So how many have they actually let go so far?
Well, 75,000 people have already taken voluntary buyouts.
Voluntary, so not forced out.
Right, at least not directly. But there are also 14 agencies that have had to implement layoffs.
Oh, wow. So it's already happening. Any specific examples?
Yeah, the Veterans Affairs Department is one. They're streamlining a lot of their processes. The Forestry Service is reducing staff. And even the CDC and EPA have experienced cuts.
It's kind of hard to believe that even agencies like the CDC and EPA are being affected.
It's a sign of how serious they are about cutting costs, I guess. But the real story, the thing that's really making people nervous, is this system they're using called the Starlink People Analysis System.
Starlink, like the satellite internet thing?
Yeah, I know it's a weird name, but apparently it's this AI-powered system that ranks the necessity of federal jobs.
Wait, so an algorithm's deciding who gets to keep their job?
Basically, yeah. It's analyzing tons of data to determine which jobs are essential and which can be cut.
That's kind of scary. I mean, we're talking about people's livelihoods here. It's a big deal.
I know. It raises some serious questions about the role of AI in these kinds of decisions and the impact on the future of work in general.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it's not just broad cuts, right? They're using AI in other ways too.
Oh, yeah. They're getting very specific. For instance, they're using AI to analyze IRS audit records, trying to identify inefficient auditors, which, you guessed it, could lead to thousands more layoffs just within the IRS.
That's crazy. It
Yeah.
seems like no one is safe. It reminds me of that visualization 1X user made. It showed all the DC home listings popping up right as the median home values started plummeting. It was pretty powerful.
Yeah, it was. It really brought home the fact that this is impacting real people and families in a very tangible way.
Right. I mean, we always thought government jobs were pretty stable and secure, but now...
It seems like even those are vulnerable in this new world. It makes you wonder what's next, right? If AI can disrupt government jobs, what does that mean for the rest of us?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. It's clear Doge is really shaking things up here in the U.S. But their efforts are also part of a bigger trend, right? What some are calling the Trump revolution. And it seems like that's impacting things way beyond U.S. borders.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're potentially seeing a realignment of global power, and it's happening really, really fast.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with. One of the biggest signals of this shift is Trump's reciprocal tariff policy. Like, you tax us, we tax you back.
Right, and it sounds pretty simple, but it's creating these huge ripples through the whole global trade system.
Yeah, it's a major signal, right? Like maybe the end of this whole WTO globalized economy thing that's been going on for decades.
Exactly. And that has big implications for well, everyone.
For sure. So why is this happening now? Is it just about like America first and protectionism, or is there a deeper strategy?
It seems like there's a few things going on. On one hand, they definitely want to revitalize U.S. manufacturing, bring jobs back to America.
Right, that's the Make America Great Again part.
Exactly. But they're also trying to address trade imbalances that have been building for years, so it's also kind of a direct challenge to the whole existing global economic order.
Wow, okay. So which countries are being most affected by these tariffs?
Well, some of the biggest targets are China, Japan, South Korea, and several members of the European Union, too.
Oh, well, so it's not just about China.
Nope. And these tariffs, they might just be the beginning. There's been talk about even more escalations if those countries don't change their trade practices.
Wow, okay. So the Trump revolution isn't just about the U.S. government. It's about reshaping America's role on the world stage.
Yeah, exactly. And this is creating a ton of uncertainty for businesses that rely on global supply chains.
Right. All those made in China stickers might start disappearing.
Potentially. And it raises the question of what it means for you as a consumer. Could we see price increases, shortages?
It's kind of a scary thought.
It is a complex situation with a lot of interconnected factors.
Totally. Okay, so we've got global trade all in flux. Are we seeing any big changes in alliances too?
Oh, absolutely. It's really interesting. You've got Trump taking a super hard line on trade with Europe, those traditional allies.
Right, and he's even criticized them for not spending enough on their own defense.
Exactly. He basically said they're relying too much on the U.S. military.
Yeah, and Vice President Vance made similar comments in that speech he gave in Munich. Something about the biggest threats to European democracy coming from inside Europe, not outside.
Right. Like their internal problems are a bigger deal than any external threats.
It feels very deliberate, right? Like they're trying to disrupt these long-held assumptions about partnerships.
Oh, for sure. And on the other hand, you've got Trump reaching out to Russia. It's a really fascinating, potentially dangerous kind of geopolitical game they're playing.
Yeah. Like that phone call between Trump and Putin where they talked about Ukraine. And now there's talk of these trilateral ceasefire negotiations. Just Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S.
Right. And who's not at the table? China and the EU, which is a huge statement.
It is. It suggests maybe we're shifting away from Europe towards something totally new. And then there's the rumor that Trump might invite Russia back into the G7.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
It would be a huge realignment. Okay, so much to think about here. AI, messing with the government, trade wars, shifting alliances. It's a lot. But honestly, what I find really worrying is how do we know what to believe anymore? There's so much information flying around.
Oh, yeah. You've hit on a huge issue here. Misinformation, selective information sharing, confirmation bias. It's rampant. And people are reacting emotionally, especially with all this rapid change.
Right. It's like, how do we even process all of this? And I keep thinking about that thing with Musk's tweet about USC guys spending millions on condoms in Gaza.
Ah, yeah. It shows how misinformation spreads, even from people you wouldn't expect.
Right. I mean, it turned out the Gaza he was talking about wasn't even the Palestinian territory, but a province in Mozambique. And those condoms, part of a big HIV prevention program.
Yep. To his credit, Musk did admit he was wrong, and Doge launched that website partly as a way to communicate more formally.
Right, better than Twitter rants.
Exactly. But it shows how dangerous it is to jump to conclusions, to get swept up in those emotional interpretations, especially with something as complex as the war in Ukraine.
Yeah. Speaking of Ukraine, there's been so much confusion about the ceasefire stuff. Like, are they actually going to stop fighting or what?
Totally. Remember that article in the Wall Street Journal about Vice President Vance's comments?
Oh, yeah. I think it made it sound like the U.S. was going to threaten military action to force Russia to negotiate.
Right. But if you actually go back and read the transcript of what Vance actually said...
It wasn't so clear-cut.
Exactly. He just emphasized that all options were on the table to encourage meaningful dialogue. But the way it was reported, it was like, U.S. threatens war.
Yeah, totally. It just shows how easily narratives can get manipulated.
Oh, yeah, and that happens on both sides, left and right. So we have to be careful. We can't just accept everything we read.
So how do we deal with all this truth deficit? It feels impossible sometimes.
Well, we have to become way more critical about the information we consume. We have to be aware of our own biases and try to get to primary sources whenever we can.
So do your own research. basically.
Yeah, exactly. And be wary of stuff that's already been filtered through multiple layers of interpretation.
Right, like that game of telephone where the message gets all garbled.
Exactly. And it's hard with so much news and opinions coming at us constantly. But we can't afford to just be passive consumers of information anymore.
So we have to actively engage, question everything.
Yeah, question, verify, and then decide if something rings true. It's a lot of work, but it's super important in this world where information can be used as a weapon.
It's like we're living in a sci-fi movie, right? AI, running the government, trade wars, truth itself under attack.
Yeah, and it's all happening now, right in front of us. This is our reality, this convergence of technology, politics, human behavior.
We're just starting to understand how it all interacts.
Exactly.
So what does it all mean? What are the big takeaways here?
I think the biggest one is that things are changing faster than ever. The old rules, the way we used to think about the world, it's not working anymore.
Right, like that whole idea of a stable job, a secure future.
It's all up in the air now. And driving this change are people like Musk and Trump, both disruptors who aren't afraid to challenge absolutely everything.
And they're using every tool they can to make their vision happen.
Yeah, technology, policy, the media, and AI is becoming a bigger and bigger part of that toolbox.
It's like we're at this turning point in history. The decisions we make now, as individuals and as society,
They'll shape the future, for better or worse.
it's a lot of responsibility. So what do you think? What happens next? It really is a lot to wrap your head around. This idea that we're in this massive technological shift with AI, but also at the same time, this huge change in how global power works. And even just figuring out what's true is a challenge.
Yeah, no kidding. It's exciting, but it's definitely a little scary too. We've got all these forces colliding, technology, politics, how people are reacting to all this new information, and it's changing the world in ways we never expected.
So what do we do? Where do we go from here with all this happening?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the way we used to think about the world, it's just not accurate anymore. Those old assumptions. Out the window, things are changing way too fast.
Right, like those old ideas about having a stable job, planning for retirement, that feels almost quaint now.
Yeah, and it's people like Musk and Trump who are driving a lot of this change. They're both disruptors. They don't care about the old ways of doing things.
And they're willing to use any tool they can find to get what they want.
Exactly. Technology, policy, media, it's all fair game. And AI is becoming a key part of that toolkit, especially with what Doge is doing.
Right. And it's all happening so fast. It feels like we're at this crossroads, and the decisions we make today.
They'll have a huge impact on what the world looks like tomorrow, for better or worse.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. But here's a question for you and for our listeners. If this Trump revolution actually works, if America really does change how it makes things, changes all its global alliances, what role will AI play in that new world?
That's the big question. Will it be used for good, driving efficiency, making things better for everyone? Or will it make things worse? More inequality, less trust in institutions?
Yeah, scary thought.
It really depends on the choices we make, how we develop AI, the ethics we build into it, and frankly, whether we understand what AI can and can't do.
It's a lot to consider. So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning about all of this.